Welcome, everyone, to Voices from the Vortex. Woohoo!
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, I am Taylor.
I'm Matt.
And you all are in for a treat, because we will be talking about Season 5 today.
Dun 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 dun!
Yes! This is our Season 5 special.
OMG, the greatest season ever.
Yes, it is such a good season, and we're going to talk about it.
Really
It's going to be really exciting, too, because we're going to kind of get into this Matt Smith, Stephen Moffat stuff, so...
And listen, if you're joining us immediately from having listened to the Season 4, I would just like to, once again, it's so sad, he's gone. My heart goes out to David Tennant, and yes, it is okay, in the Vortex, we're all allowed to cry a little, so that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's just no judgment here in the Vortex.
No judgment. I cry every day. I just watch Disney films, and it's sad.
No, but this is great, because I know that Matt Smith is your favorite Doctor.
Oh yes, and we'll talk about that. How much I love the Matt Smith.
I'll let you when we get to the end. I'll let you gush and
right on.
So we're gonna go ahead and get started here. The first episode is the 11th Hour, which just is one of the best episodes just of the whole series. I think it's really, really great.
It really is. I mean, you want to talk about an amazing starter episode to put people, on for Matt Smith and for Doctor Who. I mean, really, this episode could not have been better.
Yeah, it's really great. It starts off with kind of a little funny thing. Well, actually, it starts off like right at the end of time. The 10th Doctor has regenerated so violently that the TARDIS is crashing and it's breaking down.
Right.
One of those big pillars falls down. Yeah.
An explosion of doom.
Yes, exactly. So he's flying through, and there's this funny scene where he's kind of hanging there. And then we get this new logo and this new arrangement of the theme song.
Mm-hmm. Up until now, it had been building for David Tennant, but all of a sudden, it is just super different, but so worth it.
Yeah. The Season 4 one is just so epic and so grand, and this one kind of takes it back a little bit.
Well, and because it's restarting. I mean, we're at the beginning of a new Doctor, a new series, and we really get to see that kind of build. We get to see, this is the beginning of something that's going to last for a while. Yeah.
It's a little more subdued, a little more bouncy, kind of more sci-fi, spooky, which kind of harkens back to like the original theme, the very first one.
Right.
The first one's not as timpani and orchestra, so. It kind of goes back to that a little bit. And this, actually, a lot of people kind of had a problem with this one. There was a new thing at the beginning. They had this little trumpet part at the beginning, and people were like, "What are you doing? It's different." Yeah, so,
which is a weird thing for anyone to say, honestly. So.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds really good, and it doesn't really change the song. There's just a little thing at the beginning. It's like, okay,
a little extra
whatever.
thing,
yeah.
Well, and I like that because it marks it as different. Matt Smith's Doctor is different. This is to say, hey, look, we are starting with a new group. We're starting with a new Doctor. We're starting over in a lot of ways, and which as the season goes on, we'll see is very evident.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm even surprised that that when Doctor Who came back in 2005, that they even stuck with the original theme song. I'm surprised the song hasn't changed throughout the history of the show. Yeah, it's just the same. It's the same
didn't
tune,
have to.
No,
it didn't have to.
No, it's one of the great. It's really the greatest theme song ever.
So iconic.
So the Doctor crashes, and one interesting thing about this episode is he's regenerating, and this one his regeneration isn't really hurting him at all. In the past, they're like the Doctors, every time they regenerate, there's always something weird going on. Like Tennant made him sleepy, like he had to take a nap. You know, and then
hang on. I know we're shooting a new episode and everything. I just need to sleep for a little bit and then have a cup of tea. You're good. Go on.
Go on. You guys can handle it.
You got this.
You were there last season. But anyway, and then like the 8th Doctor, I know he gets like amnesia.
Well,
so something weird. And this one, he's hungry. You know,
he is.
He needs something to eat, and he doesn't know what he wants.
Off right away, doesn't he? I mean, it's sort of like a hey, okay, let's just get going.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is it's like there's not a lot of he's sort of thrust right into this adventure. Where with Tennant, it was like there's an adventure going on, but he didn't have to deal with it till later. Like he got to kind of sleep and
right.
Well, this one he doesn't have time to recover from this regeneration.
Well, and you know that's a big show for Matt Smith because you know David Tennant's doctor was Peter Davidson, and Matt Smith, his doctor was more Patrick Troughton. You kind of see the difference, not just in how their doctors play out over their first seasons, but you see that in kind of the episode style. You know, Peter Davidson spent most of his first episode completely out of it, and Tennant does the same thing. And then you get, you know, Troughton spends his first episode, hey, let's just pick up and go, and that's Matt Smith. Tom Baker was the same way. So you really get this sort of it doesn't matter, you know, for Matt Smith. It doesn't matter that he just regenerated. He is pumped and it's his time, and he really takes off with that idea.
Yeah, and he's got this whole thing with he meets Amelia Pond, little girl, and she has this crack in her bedroom. And just watching this scene, like we're getting to see how Matt Smith is like how he's going to be as the Doctor. He's working, he's kind of looking at this crack, and it kind of made me miss David Tennant a little bit at first. I was like, oh, how would David Tennant be like doing this scene? You know,
right.
Maybe he'd pull out the stethoscope or something. But the one thing I do like about this episode is the sort of the consistency of it. Like he's in David Tennant's clothes for most of it, and he's got the blue screwdriver at first for most of it, which then it breaks, and I'm so sad because it was my favorite. But but he gets a new one, and it's all good. So
yeah, good old Tennant screwdriver.
Yeah, but Matt Smith is he's more quieter, kind of more intense than David Tennant was. David Tennant was sort of like way over the top. And Matt Smith is much quieter.
Well, he's got a different style of, really just a different style of acting. You know, David Tennant overemphasizes everything, and that's a part of what makes him so amazing. You know, but then Matt Smith kind of underplays a lot of stuff, and you just sort of sit there and go, wow, you know, it's this intensity that really gets you.
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, I know. Very, very good. And the one thing about this episode is you get these seeds that are being planted by Stephen Moffat, like right off the bat. Mm-hmm. There's this whole thing with Prisoner Zero and how he escapes and all that. And then at one point, Prisoner Zero says to the Doctor this whole stuff about, you know, the Pandorica will open and silence will fall, and the Doctor doesn't know. And some of that stuff is like... some of that stuff is you're not even going to get to it in this season. You know, it's like next season. Right. And I'm sure they may have said something that might even be this season after that. You know what I mean? So
right. Yeah, I mean, we might even be seeing stuff from the very end. We don't know. Like, we might be hearing stuff that goes all the way to the very end of his run. Oh yeah, I mean
Stephen Moffat's really laying these seeds for like this whole story arc. Like the David Tennant stuff, he had great season arcs, but you know,
right. Well, and you know, I love that. That's what, you know, Stephen Moffat comes with, and that's what Matt Smith kind of plays to. I'm sure we'll talk more about this near the end, but it's really amazing to see such a strong start.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's going to be. I think it's all going to come full circle once we get to the end of Matt Smith. Mm-hmm. they have the David Tennant years, like DVD set. I think if they ever have like the Matt Smith years DVD set, there's going to be like a whole story there, which is going to be incredible.
God, yeah, one big condensed. I still contend, and I've talked about this with you before. I've been contending that the stuff that Prisoner Zero says when he refers to Pandorica will open, that's this season, silence will fall. I really think that is talking about something that might even happen at literally the very end of Matt Smith's run.
Yeah, that's a lot of cool stuff. Let's see. This season is also, this episode, a lot of changes happen. Not only the theme song and stuff, but he gets like, it's a new doctor, so he gets a new wardrobe. He gets like this tweed jacket and suspenders and the bow tie, which became a huge deal with Whovians alike. They were all like, "Oh, bow ties!" That like the sale of bow ties went up overnight. Like, oh, buy all the bow ties. And then
it really helped the old man's clothes departments in England. I mean, let me tell you.
Yeah, it sure did. And he gets a new screwdriver. It's green. It's got the prongs on it, and then he gets a new TARDIS. And the TARDIS it's new on the inside, which is cool because it's been the same since this new Doctor Who started.
It's very steampunk in there.
Yeah, it's all metallic, kind of real bright orange-ish inside. Really nice. And then it's also new on the outside too. It's a different kind of blue. It's more. I don't know if it's more vibrant or it's kind of darker or something, but
it's a richer blue.
Yeah, definitely. That's what it is. You also have this like kind of circle thing on the front of the TARDIS, on one of the doors. It's like a small white circle with a star, I think.
Well, and that goes all the way back to the original TARDIS design.
Yeah, which I thought it was weird that when I saw that, I go, oh, and then I knew it was part of the old one. And then I started to wonder, why they took that off, when it came, whatever. But artistic choice, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah.
So that's back, which is kind of cool for some fans. I'm sure they're like, oh, that circle is back.
Yeah, it's a neat little addition. I mean, this whole season is about change. It's about the Doctor being new again, and the Doctor being fresh, or for that matter, just starting over. The pain of being David Tennant is gone. The pain that Tennant went through just constantly, that's over. And now we are looking ahead, I guess.
Yeah, he's like, it's a new me, what's going to happen, new adventures. Yeah, definitely David Tennant was always, it's the curse of the Time Lords. And this Doctor's more happy, like, all right, let's do whatever,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Play.
Yeah, I want to play. That's good.
Well, he acts like a child a lot of the time.
Yeah, he does, and that's part of the new person that he is. But also, I think there's always, even though he's got a new personality, I think the Doctor he's always the same person. So it's like,
yeah.
So you're right. I think after this David Tennant stuff, he has made a lot of growth. He's not really in pain so much anymore, after the war. Because they really don't... one thing I'll mention is they don't really mention the war a lot in this Moffat stuff.
Well, that was one of your big concerns, too. You really had a problem with that. They just kind of stopped talking about.
Yes. Here's my main problem so far with the whole Moffat stuff. And they're actually starting to get a little more... They're getting a little better at it. I'm a huge continuity nerd. I love continuity. I love when they reference stuff that happened before. I love and it's definitely when it matches up in the story.
Right.
Like that for when Prisoner Zero said all that stuff, it's so cool to hear, to go back and watch this episode now and go, oh, that's really cool that he mentioned that, because you forget about it, and then when you see it, you go back and you watch it, you're like, whoa, so awesome.
And suddenly there it is again. And you're like, oh, this was a setup. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was the whole time. But for some reason, Moffat has decided, well, this is my show now. I'm going to do these things that I want to do. Forget all that old stuff. It still is Doctor Who, and it's still this new version of it. And I feel like he hasn't really referenced the first 4 seasons that much at all.
No.
Specifically, like the Time War. There's a couple times he mentions that he's the last of his kind, but I mean that's about it. You know, it's like, well, you still just kind of came from the Time War. It's like also we still have yet to see like the Master come back.
You haven't seen any of the villains that came back in the previous 4 seasons come back. I mean, you know, yes, you've seen the Daleks, and yes, you've seen the Cybermen, but you haven't seen, like, you know, the Master or Davros or
even some of the side characters that are like, you know, like Captain Jack. I would love to see Captain Jack come back.
Right.
You know, I don't see him strictly as having to be with David Tennant. Now, I understand some of the past companions. I don't want any of them to come back. That's fine, whatever. I understand that. But, you know, certain characters in certain situations, I feel like he writes stories more that are just like weird, timey-wimey stuff, and it's like mystery. There's no real villains, whereas like there was kind of a formula that went with the first 4 seasons where it was like the finale is always, oh, the Daleks are at it again, or you know, some big thing that's happening. And this one, it's just like,
but see, and this is where I disagree with you. I think there is a greater story going on. I think a lot of what we're seeing are just seeds that have been planted, and I think all of this stuff is going to come back. I think, you know...
Well, when it does, I'll change my tune, you know. I'll be like, oh, I see now what they were doing.
I believe in the Moffat conspiracy. I'm sorry.
I do too. It's just, it can be frustrating at times, you know, like my one biggest problem is I don't feel like he's, until recently, this season 7, I don't feel like he has properly utilized the Daleks enough.
Well, that was something that was one of the things he said right off the bat is, you know, I want the Daleks to be a presence, I want them to be a threat, but I don't want them to keep showing up, because, you know, if they keep showing up, then everyone's going to be like, oh, it's the Daleks again. Oh, well, you know, of course.
Yeah.
You know, they're not good villains if you're always expecting them to show up. You know, that's the 3rd episode, Victory of the Daleks, brings them back, but it doesn't establish them as a villain. They run and hide to begin their stratagem. To begin what they're working on.
Yeah, I feel like the first 4 seasons, like, the Dalek episodes were always, like, almost pretty much always two-parters. You know, they were a big deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like this season, either they're just kind of in the episode, or... You know, it's only like a one episode. It's not a double part or whatever. So it's like they're not as big of a deal. And even the Cybermen too, like they really haven't shown up a lot. Although they're going to show up soon, so I'm excited about that. But yeah. So that's kind of the difference there. That's kind of the difference. So, yeah.
Back to that first episode. Really good.
Yeah, definitely. The only last thing I had.
A bunch of things.
Yeah, the last thing I had for this one is he's really eager. He seems really eager for a new companion. You know, like after all that, he's like, Amy Pond, come on, let's go. You know, and I feel like I was like, oh, that's interesting because he just lost Donna and all that. You know,
right. So. Well, it's really neat to see that, you know, new Doctor. So okay, he's ready. He doesn't need to hold back anymore. He doesn't need to be like, okay, you know, well, what am I going to do now? You know, I got to be all sad and morose about it. He's like, no, I'm ready. You know, I want this. But it's more than that. You know, she's the first person that he sees. You know, and she's a little girl, and then he sees her again, and she's an adult, and you're kind of stopping and going, this girl, he's been in her entire life. So I feel like that's huge. That is a reason that these two were meant to be together.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we'll come to find out there was kind of a...
Yeah.
He was kind of drawn to her in that way. But, all right, let's move on to The Beast Below.
The Beast Below.
This is about a giant space whale that's carrying space London, or space England.
Space England. England in space! Let me tell you something I loved about this episode, amongst other things. I like episodes that don't necessarily have to have a villain. the villains, the smileys or whatever of this episode are meant to be like the scary creatures, the ones that you're like, oh no, they're gonna get you, and they are kind of creepy, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
The end.
They weren't that bad.
Yeah, they were protecting a very important piece of history, and in the end, it doesn't matter because they end up becoming knights of a new kind of history, and it's. I don't know. I like that this episode didn't have really a villain. I like that the villain was that people weren't doing something, and then
we're the villains all along.
Yeah,
it was us. Yeah.
How Doctor Who?
Yeah,
does
definitely.
Something have to be.
This episode, I guess, is kind of amongst the fans. It's kind of like one of the worst. Like people really don't like it very much. I thought it was okay.
I thought
I wasn't crazy about it.
I don't know why people hate this. It's such a fun episode.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. I don't know why either. I guess maybe it was just kind of after the first one was so good, maybe this one seemed like a disappointment. I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily live up to the first one. Okay. No. I'll give it that. But come on. The 11th hour was fast-paced. It was a brand new Doctor. It was just amazing. And then you get the Beast Below, and you're like, oh, so it's just going to be one of those episodes.
Yeah.
But you want that, because they're building. They're building to all sorts of things.
Right. This is
a fun thing.
Yeah. This is the first time we get to see the 11th Doctor, like, really mad. Like, he gets super mad at Amy and at the people.
Mm-hmm.
And really just at the whole situation that he has to deal with. And it's cool to see this, see Matt Smith play that. We're like, okay, we've seen him play him like kind of happy. We've seen him play him clever, scared, whatever.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is what this Doctor's going to be. Yeah, this is what he's going to be like when he's angry.
Oh, it was a good Matt Smith. I still think Matt Smith gets the best monologues, and some of his lines are just, no one human has anything to say to me today, and.
Yeah, he does really well with those monologues and lines that he gets. He's very, very good. And when we get to the end, I'll let you kind of gab on about how good he is, because I know you like him a lot.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Yeah. One last kind of fun thing is you see a sign on the ship at like one of the stores in the town is Magpie Electricals. I thought that was fun.
Oh yeah, that was a really good throwback.
Throwback to the
Magpie episode. Yeah,
with the wire and I can't remember the name of it is, but
and as well, yeah, it was
the Idiot's Lantern. That's it. Yeah.
You know me, that's one of my least favorite episodes of that season. It just feels like, they just had to fill some space.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Matt Smith's fun adventures that are just random and nothing happens, but it's just a fun adventure, just seem to be better than David Tennant's versions of them.
Well, and I think that has a lot to do with the writing. Definitely.
Yeah, well, Moffat was a stronger writer than Davies was, I feel.
I do
episode
too.
to episode.
Like I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think that David Tennant is still my favorite Doctor, but I feel like the show now is like way better than it was when David Tennant was.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. Like I feel like it's kind of a shame. It's like, oh, I wish like there would been a kind of a switch over where David Tennant had like a season with Moffat at the helm, and then, because I wonder what that would have been like. That would have been really cool. But
yeah, and how amazing would that have been?
That would have been great. Really good. And then the last thing is you see the crack again on the ship.
Again.
So that's kind of that's kind of the through line there, is you're just going to see these cracks.
Right. The theme for the season, which you get to by the end. It's that something was actually happening. Again, wibbly wobbly timey wimey. The stuff happening at the beginning of the season is happening after the stuff, realistically, at the end of the season happened. But we just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, yeah. I like the next episode is Victory of the Daleks. Mm-hmm. I did like that he brought the Daleks back so soon. I was like, yay, you know.
Yeah.
And what happens is, I guess one ship survived, as it always does, you know, after Donna and 10, Doctor 2, I call him, destroyed all the ships. I guess one had gotten out of there and just whatever, I don't know how, but it survived.
Yeah,
and they sort of
survived.
Yeah,
I don't think it needs to have an explanation. It just sort of
no,
is.
No, really, it's just
damn,
happens.
They survived.
They always do. And they sort of set up this trap where they like build this robot man and make him like pretend or not make him think that he invented these machines that Winston Churchill's going to use in the war.
Right. What did he call them?
It's Ironsides.
Ironsides. I keep wanting to call them Metaltrons, which is what what's his face called them in Dalek.
Oh,
Van Horn.
Metaltrons. Well, anyway, they set up this trap, and I'll let you explain this because I don't really. I even after I watched it again, I don't really get what the thing that they did was.
So there's this device, and basically the device, the progenitor, only responds to pure Dalek. The problem is those Daleks, the Daleks we've been seeing, aren't really the Daleks that were supposed to be the pure Daleks. They're not the ones that were designed for the progenitor. They needed a pure form of Dalek, which didn't exist anymore. So to get the machine to recognize that these Daleks were Daleks, the enemy, the great predator of the Daleks, they had to convince the Doctor to say their names, to admit who they are.
Say my name.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So as long as they could get, they called it the testimony. So he gives the testimony. I mean, he does. He calls them by their name, and that's what they wanted. Mm-hmm. They knew it was they knew by showing up that he would eventually say it, because that's who he is. He can't resist but hating them, and his hatred led to them becoming even stronger than they were before.
Right. So it makes these like 5 new Daleks or whatever. And I call them the Mighty Morphin Power Daleks because they're all different colors.
I call them the iDaleks. They just remind me of those iMacs.
Those commercials are the iPods. They're all different colors next to yeah.
They're robots in disguise as robots.
Yeah. So this was a weird episode to see the Daleks and the fact that they don't get destroyed in the end. You know, like they always do. Mm-hmm. It's and one escapes. You know, they all escape. They all leave. Because the Doctor has to deal with this bomb thing on Earth, but yeah, mm-hmm. like it was really kind of a weird Dalek episode, which I was like, wait a minute, Moffat, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah. Well, he's setting it up. I mean, he makes them a threat. They are in the background. You know, they're out there doing what they do, and you don't know mm-hmm. where, and you don't know when. Suddenly they're going to show up, and that makes them scarier than ever.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way it used to be with the Daleks. You didn't know. You know? Yeah.
Well, you could kind of count on them being the Daleks in the finales of the last 4. You're like, oh, it's going to be the Daleks again, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now they just kind of randomly show up, which is good.
There is something in this episode that's really important, and the Doctor makes mention of it. You know, he says, it's weird, you know, how can everyone suddenly have forgotten a giant Cyber King walking, you know, in 1800s London, and that's the throwback to when he's talking about the next Doctor. Yeah, and that's important because
that and the big thing, and this is Amy has no idea who the Daleks are. She's never even heard of the Daleks,
right?
And he's like, "What are you talking about? They've attacked Earth like every year for the past 3 years.
Planets in the sky. How come no one remembers planets in the sky?
Yeah, how can you not remember that? How can you not remember, you know, them coming to Canary Wharf or whatever? Yeah. And she's like, I don't know who they are. I don't know what, you know. So that's like a big, and by the end, he kind of forgets it he's like, and then at the end he's like, there's something bigger. Why don't you remember who the Daleks are? Yeah.
Something else is going on now. Yeah.
That's all I got for this.
Go ahead.
I just said that's all I have for this one.
Oh. Yeah, no, 3 really good episodes, I feel, and then we get into a 2-parter that is by far and wide the best re-entrance of 2 very amazing Moffat creations. We see the return of River Song, and we see the return of the Weeping Angels.
Yeah. And the one thing I like about this is this episode is mentioned in the library. River Song says, she says, have we done the crash of the Byzantium yet? And
right.
You're like, you just hear that's just gibberish when you hear it. And then this episode pops up and you're like, oh, this is what she was talking about.
Right. The crash of the Byzantium.
Yeah, it was so cool. Even back when he was just a writer, he was like, oh, I'm setting up something for when I take over.
Exactly. He must have known.
He must have known by then that he was going to take over. Or at least he was going to try to incorporate this character in, even if he wasn't going to take over.
Right. Well, yeah, he knew he was going to be there. He knew he was going to continue to be making Doctor Who, and that's important. Hey, if you believe it, there you go. It's going to happen.
Yeah. It's interesting that this is the second time he's met her. And so he's kind of like still doesn't know that much about her.
Right. Doesn't know who she is.
Yeah. Turns out she's a prisoner with the church or whatever, and she's trying to make parole and get let out.
The militant priests, yeah.
Yeah. And then, and you find out that, like, oh, she killed someone. So it's like, okay. It's this whole thing, like, who did she kill, and why would it make the Doctor angry if he knew who she killed or something? You know what I mean? So,
right.
That kind of sets that up, and that's not even answered until this next season. So,
right. Yeah, we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm. One interesting thing about this one is there's like a whole crap ton of new things that the angels can do.
Right.
They can, you find out like any image of an angel becomes an angel.
Right. New rules.
Yeah, and then you find out like they can like don't look into their eyes. You're not supposed to look into their eyes, or they'll get into your eye. Mm-hmm. Which was kind of a weird thing.
I see you.
Yes. And then
the biggest thing was that they don't displace you in time. That those were just the scavengers who did that. That is something they can do, but it's not necessarily something they have to. And in this instance, they just murder you.
Well, right. In this instance, they were feeding off the energy from the ship, and also from the from the crack that was there. And so they were like, well, we don't need, if you're just a snack, I'll just like crack your neck. I don't really need you.
Right.
Yes. So they would do that. Yeah.
I love the setup in this. I love setting up that the statues, don't have 2 heads. The statues were angels all along, and they basically just walked right into the middle of Angel Central.
Yeah.
And the Doctor doesn't see it. He's getting old. He's missing these things. He totally would have seen that. He would have asked that question.
Yeah,
Why
I love those situations where, and Tennant did it too, where he'd be doing something and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm so thick. I'm so stupid. How did I not realize this?"
Yeah.
And now Matt Smith does it too, which is kind of fun to see.
Yes.
I'm gonna bring this up when we get to the end, but this episode and the first one, these events are specifically they have to do with the crack.
Yes.
Like the crack is sort of it. There's the crack is sort of the reason that these events happen, and I'll come back to this. I'm mentioning this for a reason, so we'll come back to this at the end.
Yeah, the cracks just show up in the other ones.
Yeah, they just showed up, but these, it's like, well, the crack was the reason that they crashed the ship,
right.
And all that. And then also, the crack was how Prisoner Zero escapes.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that when we get to the end. I don't want to bring that up now. And I'll bring it up again when we talk about other episodes that are, directly affected by the crack.
So one of the things about this 2-parter that I didn't like, but I ended up liking at the end, but there's a really great scene with the Doctor when Amy can't see, when she has to keep her eyes closed, where he shows up and he's like, he's wandered off, and then he comes back and he says, I'm working it out. Don't worry. I need you to trust me. And I don't know. There was something about that scene. It was so close, close up. I felt like, this is totally, something's going on here. I don't like this scene. I don't like that the Doctor would just out of nowhere be like, okay, don't worry, I'm coming back. And I mean, he just said that, I don't know. There was just so much about it I didn't like. And then that will be an important scene, which we'll talk about later on, but that it's more is going on that is not in continuity, or that's not in order.
Right. And if you were really paying attention, you could see that, like, he had his coat on. Yeah, and he didn't have it on earlier, and like, and just the way he was talking was a little different. And yeah, that comes up later. So a lot of people probably saw that and went, "Oh, well, something's screwy there," and they paid off in a big way, I thought.
It did. It really did.
Couple little small things I'll mention after this. River talks to him about the Pandorica. I'll see you again when the Pandorica opens.
Mm-hmm. The Pandorica
sort of she seems to kind of set up what the next episode she'll see him in, when she says that, because she knows she's going backwards.
Right.
And then they find out the date of the explosion that causes these cracks. They kind of figure that out. It's in Amy's time. It's Amy's wedding day, which is a weird thing.
Interestingly enough, that was also the date that episode, the final episodes, would air.
Oh, that's cool. I love when that happens.
that was just that was actually the day that they aired the episode. The Pandorica opens.
Yeah, that's like on Lost. The very first episode aired on September 22nd, and that's the date of the crash.
Right.
September 22nd. I like that, so that's kind of cool they did that.
It's a little meta there. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, the last thing is, at the end of this episode, Amy is like all turned on, and she's like, "Come here, big boy,"
Right, right.
And this was kind of, I kind of didn't like it. It was kind of weird.
A lot of people had a problem with it.
Yeah, I thought
there was
really
actually a
weird.
lot of people were very upset that the Doctor was that sexual. Like, this is a children's show. How is he being sexy like this?
Right.
But as you can see, again, it wasn't him. He wasn't trying to be sexual. It was her, and he was refuting her advances. So
yeah. Well, and there's that, but the other weird thing was, it was like, yeah, usually there's like, I mean, there's been kisses and stuff. And even in this new companion, she's kissed him already.
Right.
Or, well, a version of her. Well, that's a different thing. But,
I love this show.
I know, I do too. But
version of her, maybe it's a thing, and we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it. But this was like, it was weird because it was a children's show, and you're like, well, this is kind of, what she's, acting. And then it also seemed really out of character for Amy. Like, just all of a sudden, she was like, oh yeah, the Doctor. Like, it seemed like a really weird thing to all of a sudden happen in the show.
Well, you say that, but then remember, she sees him when she's a child, obsesses over him her whole life, and then he comes back, and you're having these random adventures, and then it's this moment where he brings her back, and she's like, this is my opportunity. I mean, she fantasized about that. She wanted the Doctor.
She had Rory dress up as him.
It's favorite moment.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I thought it was just a game.
Yeah. So it was, that was kind of a weird thing. And a lot of people didn't like it. So that's kind of the one weird thing about this new season that was kind of irked me a little bit, but it's not, I mean, and then it's over. It's, they don't really mention it again.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a weird one-time thing. The next one is Vampires of Venice. This is cool because Rory joins the party.
This is where we finally start going, okay, is he the new Mickey?
Yeah. But he turns out to be the new, they turn out to be the new Ian and Barbara. You know what I mean?
They really did. They were the married couple. Oh yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I love Rory and Amy. I really do. I don't care what people say. First season Rory, okay, yeah, bit of a tool, but he gets there. He gets to a good place.
I mean their love story. Their love story was just like so good, and almost they kind of almost hit you over the head with it a lot.
Yeah.
Like every episode, it's like, oh, it's like I love you even more now. But
no, I love you more now.
Yeah, but they did it. It's like they go through all these adventures, like where one of them almost dies like every time, or like something bad happens. So it's like he's like, it's like, okay, well, I must love you more now after this. And it's like, oh no, I can love you more.
Wouldn't you say something like that too? If it was someone you loved.
Well, definitely, it was realistic, but it was just like almost all the time. So, right. But it was well done. I didn't get annoyed at it, but I kind of recognize as like, oh well, it is a lot, but I'm not getting annoyed with it because it's well written and it's really good. So
right.
So there's
Vampires of Venice is good. I don't know.
It's all right.
It's definitely one of those in the season you're just kind of like, cool, fun, exciting. Now what's next? They make a couple of references which are really nice about the silence.
Mm-hmm.
The one lady says, we looked through the cracks and all we saw were silence, which is kind of like, oh, interesting. So you saw I don't know. It's a bizarre episode. I think it plays out really well, but it doesn't fit in with the main theme as much as I'd like it to have.
Well, she says they fled from the cracks. Like their home planet was sucked through the crack or whatever. So that's important because this story is affected by the cracks directly. They wouldn't have happened if there were no cracks. So we'll talk about that. But
exactly.
So yeah, and then and at the very and well, I was just saying, at the very end, there's like that silence, kind of weird,
kind of just playing up that theme.
Which I'm also thinking, and he kind of looked around and like all the people were gone. So
they were?
Well, kind of. Like it wasn't as busy and like it was kind of quiet, and I didn't know. Well, that's how I saw it.
Especially with the stuff we know from season 6 and going forward, I feel like a lot of that was just red herring. Moffat's so good at trying to throw you off the trail.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that might have been him just trying to make you go, ooh, maybe it's going to be like this, just so he can fool you at the end.
Yeah.
You sort of stop and go, really, dude? Really?
Yeah, they throw out a lot of... Yeah, they throw out a lot of the stuff about the silence, like early, like this season, and then when you get to season 6 and they actually go into what the silence is, it's like not even what you thought. You think it's going to be something with like like the actual word, and it turns out to be this whole other thing.
Right.
So
cool
it was kind of a cool thing, but it was almost like this was to throw you off because it wasn't what you. Because she says we ran from the silence, and you think, looking back now, knowing what we know now, you're like, okay, were they running from the silence, the group,
quiet?
or
the group,
or quiet?
The silence.
Yeah, what were they doing? So that was kind of it was kind of throwing off there.
Yeah, well, and maybe again, a lot of that is probably just red herring. It's meant to create suspension of disbelief and terror. It's meant to kind of get you involved in the mystery, and it does a really good job at that. But some of it doesn't make sense now.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's kind of why this isn't my favorite episode, because I'm like, it doesn't really. You're right. It doesn't match with the kind of the whole theme of the series here, and this season specifically.
Exactly.
But then we get this next one, which is just a fun episode. It's great. Amy's Choice.
Amy's Choice. We meet a new villain.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully will be a reoccurring villain.
That would be cool.
And it's the Dream Lord.
Yeah. The only problem with him coming back is he'd have to have some new trick, because they could easily figure out this one after going through it the first time. So
well, and it's always possible too. The old show did a lot with. There was a whole season about a character named the Valeyard, who was basically the negative evil emotions of the Doctor. In between his final regeneration, that would manifested inside the Gallifreyan Matrix. Mm-hmm. There's possibly the nerdiest thing I've ever said in my life. Awesome, but nerdy.
No, so you didn't. You didn't say the word "actually" in front of it.
Say what?
I said you didn't say the word "actually" in front of it.
That's a good point.
Damn. Actually.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, actually this. Mm-hmm.
Actually, well played, clerks. Well played. What was I saying? I don't even know. Oh, the Valeyard. So there was a character named the Valeyard, and this is kind of a reference to that. It feels like it. The Dream Lord being basically all of the negative stuff, and you sort of go, okay, so does that mean that he has the capability of becoming that character, becoming the Valeyard? Is the Dream Lord the beginning of the Valeyard?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, especially if you know all that old stuff. That's really interesting to know.
Maybe that's what all this is leading up to. So
it's got
a lot of the theories of what all this is building to that I've had and you've had and some others have had is just takes a lot of these ideas from the old show, and there's just so many references. That it could totally be the Valeyard. It could be the Black Guardian, doing all of this. And anyone who's never seen the old show would be like, "What's the Black Guardian?" And then you watch the episode, and you're like, "Oh my god, it could be the Black Guardian."
Yeah, well, that's the thing. See, that's the thing is I haven't really seen a lot of the old show, so when I get mad about continuity, I'm like probably. Speaking out of turn, because he's probably referencing a whole bunch of old stuff that I don't even know.
You're like, damn it, I must know this.
Yeah, it's like, why aren't you referencing the stuff that happened like a couple seasons ago? But he's referencing like stuff that happened years ago, so he's actually doing something,
Well, if any of you out there really want to see some of the stuff that we're talking about, by the way, the Black Guardian trilogy is a series of stories, 3 stories, from Peter Davidson's era, the 5th Doctor. This was the second time the Black Guardian showed up, but that was actually the first one I ever saw of the Black Guardian. It's where the Black Guardian decides he wants to finally kill the Doctor. Before that, Tom Baker's Doctor, the 4th Doctor, had a whole season-long story arc called The Key to Time. And The Key to Time dealt with the White Guardian and the Black Guardian, and that these two forces opposing each other were trying to find this object which could allow them to control everything. So you can see, if you watch those, you can see where a lot of these references are going. And then the Valeyard, of course, is from the 6th Doctor, Colin Baker, and that was the Trial of the Time Lord? No, the Trial of the Time Lord, and it's good, but it's long.
Yeah.
It's definitely a reason why Colin Baker did not survive as the Doctor.
So sad.
It is sad.
Last little fact about this episode for me is this is Rory's first death. He will die many times coming up here throughout his whole time on the show, and so this is the first time, and you think, oh no,
yeah,
and then you'll see it again and again. So,
well, and it's funny that he becomes that character. He's Kenny, from South Park. It's sad, but it kind of gives him a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, you kind of know who he is based on that. Yes, he dies several times, quite a few several times, but then you're like, but that gives him meaning. Now his love for Amy makes more sense.
Right, and by the end of his run, he's a super brave guy. I mean, nothing scares him. He can handle almost anything.
Right.
Because of all his experiences he's had. And I really love the whole thing where Amy decides, well, if Rory's not here, then this must be the fake reality.
Right. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah.
Rory's not here. This isn't it, or whatever. So.
Right.
Yeah,
Aww,
she really
loves him.
I know, it was so good.
It was so good.
Okay, we'll move on. There's another two-parter, and this brings back an old Doctor Who villain, the Silurians.
The Silurians.
And this
was
kind of cool.
Favorite of Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, and this was cool because he sort of redesigned them, the way they looked.
He did. He makes them look so cool.
Well, and there's this whole thing of they kind of look like they used to, and then there's this whole thing of like, oh, well, let me just take off this mask. Like, this is how I really look underneath,
Yeah.
Which I thought was a cool idea. And it's like, he's not changing them completely. He's just like, well, they were wearing masks, you see.
Yeah, you haven't seen them yet. You've only seen the masks.
Yeah.
I really like the Silurians. I like the two-parter. One of the things, though, I feel like they are very underused. You don't really see, this is a great, new idea that there's this race living underneath the Earth, but then we don't really revisit them at all. They're just gone.
Yeah. We'll see him come. We'll see some Silurians come back, but yeah, they haven't really come back as a villain yet.
Yeah, we'll see them again, and it's I don't know. Moffat's really just making the universe crowded. It feels like it's where Davies made it seem like every time a villain popped up and was defeated by the Doctor, it was done.
Yeah.
And Moffat makes it feel like, oh, and hey, look over here, there's this thing too, and then there's this thing. Oh, don't forget about this thing.
Right. It's like it's like the Doctor would always defeat them in Davies' era. Mm-hmm. He would always defeat them, but then like if they came back, it was under extraordinary circumstances. Like, how could you be here?
Right. It's not possible. I defeated you already.
Yeah. In this, it's like, well, I guess hopefully I don't have to see you again next time, like...
Oh, man. It's not even that.
Around. Yeah.
It's not even that. It's Silurians. Of course. Great. So this is the adventure I'm going to have this week. And you're just like, you knew they were here? Why didn't you try and stop them? Yeah. It's cool. They have a right to live.
Yeah.
You're just like,
my one interesting thing about this is... there's this whole story about how the Silurians were like they've always been in the Earth, and I guess this is an old story. I didn't know too much about it, but they've always they were the first inhabitants of the Earth or whatever.
Right, they're the dinosaur people,
right? And I thought that was always interesting because we see the thing with the Runaway Bride with Donna, where they go back to the creation of Earth, and in the middle of the Earth, there's this big spider web nest also. So it's like. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the Earth, apparently.
Yeah, the Earth is not necessarily the humans' realm.
Right.
We got to figure that out.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that this show has definitely pushed at us. It's like, we're just living on this thing, but it's been,
What did they used to call it in my science class when I was younger? Spaceship Earth.
Yeah.
And then I would laugh because that sounds like the douchiest thing in the world to say.
Yeah. Let me see.
So you get and then of course we get Rory dies.
Well, there's a crack. They find another crack in the cavern.
He gets unmade,
and he gets shot, and then he dies. There's another death, and then he gets absorbed by the energy of the crack, and he gets. He never existed. Erases him from time.
Exactly.
And I was like, dang. First of all, I was like, to kill the companion, I was like, oh, geez. And then...
just to kill him. I mean, dude doesn't get a break.
Yeah,
but then he was never here.
Yeah. And then just to wipe him from the existence, like, Rory who,
right?
And it's really sad too.
Rory who?
It's really sad again to see Amy just forget who he is. You're like, no, Amy, don't forget. And then there's a bump.
You can hold on to him. You can remember.
And then they hit a bump and she forgets. And it's like, oh god.
Yeah.
Which makes the next
did you notice what the Doctor told her?
Yes,
he said nothing's ever forgotten. If you hold on to the memory, if you remember it, which comes back later at the end.
Yeah,
about her parents.
Yes, and the last thing about this is he reaches into the crack and pulls out some shrapnel from this explosion. He figures out, oh well, let me figure this out, and it's a piece of the TARDIS, and you're like, what? No, you know.
You're like, crap.
Oh, jeez, you know what's going to happen here.
Prisoner Zero was right.
Yeah, I don't know. so that set up a lot of
fun.
Yeah. Pretty good.
At the end.
Yeah. And it makes the next couple of episodes weird because then you get this whole thing where it's like Amy doesn't remember him. So it's like now it's just the Doctor and Amy for a couple episodes. And the whole time you're thinking, but Rory.
But Rory. Well, the next episode's the Vincent van Gogh episode, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great episode.
Yeah, this is very good. And the one thing I'll say I love about these episodes is, where he's got like a famous friend. Yeah. That he's with. Like there's been at least one per season. First one you had Charles Dickens. The second one you get Queen Victoria. And then the third season you get Shakespeare. The fourth season you have Agatha Christie. And then this season you got two. You got Winston Churchill first, and then you also get this one, which is the one with Churchill wasn't really about Churchill, which the other ones usually are. He was just kind of there, but this one is like centered around the famous person.
And this really sets it up with Matt Smith because as the seasons go on, we find out he is just friends with all sorts of celebrities.
Yeah,
he's probably the most known human or most known character human being, the most known person on Earth. How is it nobody knows him?
Yeah.
But so it was. I thought that was a great episode. I love the stuff with Vincent. I
did too. The ending is the best.
Yes, it is.
It's very good. It's very emotional. That whole scene. It's hard to watch without getting a little misty-eyed. Very beautiful ending. I will say I wasn't a huge fan of the whole story in the middle with like the monster that you couldn't see. That was just kind of it was like kind of whatever.
So we had to have a monster.
Yeah, it's like definitely.
Well, I will say this though. I really loved he gets that device that was given to him. His godmother or whatever gave to him, and he puts on the mirror, And I love at first it doesn't recognize him, and he has to use a pass, that shows his old form.
Yeah,
I thought it was so clever.
It like he looks at it and then it says who he is. It's like, oh, you're the Doctor, and like this paper comes out. It's got a picture of the first Doctor on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like that too. And that happens it was in the Vampires of Venice. He's going to show the girls the psychic paper, but he doesn't have it. He ends up showing them his library card, which has the first Doctor on it, which is pretty funny.
Yep.
Yeah. So I like that. That was good. Let's see.
Is it just me, or does anyone else wonder if maybe the Professor Black stuff is going to come back? I feel like Bill Nighy could not possibly have been hired for just one episode.
He was very good. The interesting thing about that one is they create a circular paradox in this episode.
Do they?
Well, they in the fact that they take him to the museum and they show him all his artwork, which then inspires him to create those paintings that are in the museum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a paradox, but it's a time loop.
I don't think he necessarily he sees the paintings, but he wasn't really there long enough to know what the paintings were that he was going to have to make them. I think he was always going to make them, but there's no way he could have been he couldn't have seen it and been like, oh well, I gotta do this one now with flowers, and I gotta do this one now with and I gotta do this, and no, I feel like because he did his best work right before he died, in the last 6 months or whatever, and I feel like I feel like that right there should say something that, maybe that inspired him.
Yeah, and he was a little crazy, so there was that.
Yes. It was... Seriously, if someone pulled you, hundreds of years into the future and said, "Hey, here's the stuff that you're gonna do, and it's gonna last forever."
And you're not only the greatest painter, or one of the greatest painters who ever lived, you're also one of the greatest men who ever lived. I'd be like, oh my god.
You're not paying attention to the stuff on the wall, dude. You're not looking at the posters that they got hanging up. Or in our case, it might be holograms or something. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
It's a hologram tattoo on my body. That would be so cool. Sorry, I'm writing a Doctor Who episode in my head right now. I'm just like, hologram tattoos from the future.
Yeah. I think that's all I had for this one.
Yeah. Great episode. Probably the strongest of the entire season, next to, I believe, the 11th Hour.
Yeah, really, really good. Okay, so this brings us to The Lodger. This is one of those
episode.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that's like, let's just be really funny.
Well, it's nice to see him. It's nice to see him just be like, to be different, to try and fit in. It's so funny to watch him try and fit in.
Yeah. It's one of those where it's just like there's kind of a mystery and there's kind of something a little scary, but most of it's just funny. It's just kind of a let's just let Matt Smith be hilarious and
right.
And just try to fit in exactly. This is one of those, another one where he loses the TARDIS again. It's like...
Does that a lot.
Huh?
He seems to do that a lot. Where he just suddenly, nope, no more TARDIS.
Yeah. And it happens like right at the beginning of the episode, and it's like, it just magically shows up at the end again. Like, oh, there it is.
Right. Gotta figure out a way to get back to it, and episode's over. Cool. It's fine.
Yep.
It was really cool to see him interacting with Craig. I like that actor.
He's really good. Mm-hmm. And especially once they sort of work together. He does this thing which he's done before, this sort of mind meld thing where he he'll tell the person what or it's this trick that he doesn't do very often, but he's done it before. Like he did it with Madame Pompadour, and he did it with the Master one time, and then he did it with Donna, obviously, to sort of erase her memories. But
he never did it as brutally as he did it with Craig.
No, that's what I was gonna say. There's this Tennant uses his hands and puts them really nicely on your forehead and on your temples. Matt Smith headbutts you.
The real difference between Matt Smith and David Tennant, the headbutting.
Yeah, it was good. And then it's just another episode where there's no bad guy. It's just there was a ship, a time ship that was stuck up there, and it was just trying to find a pilot. And,
it is. I mean, it's one of those things that comes in later. It's a seed, setting stuff up for later. The same way at the very beginning, we get, what's his name, Prisoner Zero, saying that, Pandorica will open, silence will fall. It's all just this build-up.
Yeah, and
maybe it's just seeds being planted.
Yeah, especially right after the very end of the episode, there's the crack, another crack. It's right next to Craig's fridge,
Yeah, it's following. Yeah, it's getting closer.
Yeah, and another thing that happens in this one is that right at the end, Amy finds the ring from Rory, and that's kind of the cliffhanger of this one. Is she gonna remember what's gonna happen there? That was pretty cool. And that brings us to the finale.
Da, 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 da.
The Pandorica opens.
Yay!
I have to say, this is a really, really good two-parter. Just one of the best finales. It's definitely at the top.
Well, and we had talked about it before that every finale seems to top itself.
Yeah.
It started with, the Daleks return. Oh no, 200,000 years in the future, they're back. And then, the next season finale, the Daleks in current time with the Cybermen, no. And then the Master's taken over the Earth, that's craziness. And then, oh no, the Daleks have returned and pulled the Earth out of its place and put it in a machine that'll destroy all life as we know it. And it just kept building. The Time Lords returned, it's the end of everything.
End of time itself.
The end of time itself. What could possibly be more deadly than the end of time itself? Oh, reality never having happened. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well done, Moffat. You topped it.
This one is it's got a lot of interesting things. It starts out with it's kind of got this whole run through of the season real quick. It's like, oh hey, remember Winston Churchill? Oh hey, remember Liz 10? Oh hey,
right.
Remember Vincent Van Gogh? Okay, hey, they all have to do with this. There's this painting, and then River gets this time vortex manipulator from this big fat blue guy.
Everybody exists in this finale. That's something that Moffat does that Davies would not do. Because, seriously, with Moffat, all these characters you've been seeing through the whole season, bam, they're right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's just not... You didn't get that with Davies. Davies would hint at something, but it was always from beyond, it was always something you hadn't seen before,
Right. Yeah, and Moffat does that with future seasons too, and we'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But he does that. It's some character you see, you think, oh, I'll never see them again,
right?
And then, as opposed to the Doctor's daughter Jenny, who we think, oh, we'll definitely see her again sometime. No,
yeah.
No.
Nope. Sucks to be you fools.
Yeah.
I will say, though, one of the things that I was really excited about, you know me, I love pretty much any time we get a really, really good Doctor Who monologue or Doctor Who speech. I love his quotes, and he has the best one in this episode.
Yeah, it's really, really good. The whole, I am talking!
Yeah, and, which is a throwback. That goes back to Eccleston.
Mm-hmm.
At the very beginning, the very first episode, when he sees the Nestene consciousness, when he first meets Rose, and he's talking, and the thing interrupts him, and he goes, "I am talking," and it just quiets down so he can keep speaking.
Mm-hmm. It also reminds me of it's the guy in Idiot's Lantern, the dad, who used to say that all the time.
Yeah,
he said, "I am talking." This one, we got River Song comes back, and she does a bunch of crazy stuff. This one, she goes back to the first planet ever or whatever, and writes on this cave, or writes on this wall. It's like the first words ever. Oh, I guess they're "Hello, sweetie," and then she pretends to be Cleopatra and tricks these Romans into being that she thinks she's Cleopatra. Mm-hmm. And basically, they find out that the TARDIS is going to explode, and that's what, and they kind of deduce that's what caused all these cracks and stuff. So they can figure out how.
Right.
One interesting thing about this episode is there's a Cyberman in this episode. Or there's some Cybermen in this episode, and I've been doing some reading on this, and I guess there's two types of Cybermen. There's the ones that Russell T Davies sort of created. They're the Cybus Industries Cybermen. They have the C on their chest.
Right.
And then there's the real Cybermen, I guess, from the old show. I guess they're called the Mondus Cyber. They're from the planet Mondus or whatever. And we'll see we'll actually see some Mondus Cybermen later
We do?
In season... yeah, I believe so. In season...
didn't they have the M on their chest? Or the C?
They don't have an M. They don't have an M. They just have a circle. It's just a circle.
Interesting.
And the ones that were made by... I can't think of his name,
Lumic.
but the guy in... Huh?
Lumic, yeah.
Yeah, Lumic, that's it. They have a C on their chest. Well, in season 7, we get to that one. There's an episode where there's some Cybermen, and those are actually Mondus Cybermen that crashed there long ago or whatever. But in this one, it's a Cybus Industries Cyberman, who they've been the ones so far throughout this whole new Doctor Who,
right.
And I thought it was kind of interesting because last we saw the Cybermen, they all got sucked into the remainder of them, got sucked into the time vortex. And this is one of those times where they come back and they don't explain how. They're just like, oh, there's just some Cybermen here. And it bugged me. I was like,
well, if you remember,
how did they... Yeah.
But if you remember, the last time we saw them, they didn't all get sucked into it because we saw them again on a Christmas special back in the 1800s that some of them survived, and they built the Cyber King.
Oh, well, that's what I'm talking about. They get sucked when the Doctor defeats them by absorbing, like they all get destroyed, and then he absorbs the Cyber King into or whatever.
Right.
You could just
into the time vortex, yeah. But I mean, those were just those ones. There might have been others all around London that were hiding.
Right. You could just say, well, there were some others, But it just bugged me that they didn't.
Device
they didn't say anything.
Device.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, so there's that, and he's like sort of guarding this Pandorica. We find it's this big box, and this is sort of explains the whole arcing story of the season here. Is with this Pandorica and the cracks. And there's this big alliance, it turns out, between like freaking everybody. Daleks, Cybermen,
that is scary.
Sontarans. Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that should never happen. And it did.
Yeah. And, Sontarans, and there were, I think I saw a Sycorax in there. I think I saw the Rhinos. The attraction were there. I'm glad they got a line. I was like, yay! But anyway, they think...
For Jadoon.
I know. They think that that there's the most feared being is in this box, and it opens up, it's empty. It turns out it's a prison for the Doctor. He's the most feared being.
Prison for the Doctor.
Yeah, it's all a big misunderstanding. They don't realize that it's not him, it's this TARDIS that's going to blow up, and that he, can help and all this stuff, and they don't care, so they lock him in there. Meanwhile, you've got Rory who comes back, and then Rory
the Roman.
He's a Roman. He's an Auton, it turns out. He shoots Amy. That's like, oh, great. And
so
then...
we get the world's most epic cliffhanger.
Well, yeah, all the stars go out, too. Yeah. So many things happen.
I mean, it's... Every star will go supernova. It'll be as if nothing ever existed. And that's exactly what happens, is everything is unmade.
Sometimes I watch Doctor Who and I go, okay, how are they going to get out of this one? And this...
Sometimes.
And this time I was like, how the crap are they going to get out of this one?
Yeah.
I was like, how are they going to... I mean, like, I have faith. I'm sure they're going to somehow, but how,
Right. But how?
And then, yeah. And so then we get the Big Bang. And this one's got stuff I love. It's got super crazy time travel stuff where he goes back and forth and all this stuff, all these loops. It's like, well, the only reason this happened is because he went back and he did this. It's so cool.
Super wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Yeah.
Which is what Moffat's good at writing.
Yeah, he's very good at writing that. That's why I love some of this new... That's why I love... Even though I like Tenet more, I love these new seasons after Tenet. I think they're so good. Especially with this timey-wimey stuff. and there's not a lot of. There's only a few. Well, I wouldn't even say a few, but like there's rarely a problem or like a contradiction or something. Like he does it so well. He fills all the holes and he ties all the ends together, and does a really good job of it.
He does. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This one's good. I like the beginning of this one where it's young Amy, and she goes to the
Return of Little Amelia Pond.
Yeah, she goes to the museum, and the Pandorica is there, and it opens, and Amy's in there, and she goes, "Okay, this is where it gets complicated." And you're like, "What?
What?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so funny too because it does. It gets very complicated, and kind of
she's speaking to the
forward,
audience here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, going forward, we definitely see it in future seasons, just how wibbly wobbly, timey wimey things can get, and this is a good primer for it.
Yeah, it is. It's just kind of a simple one. It's not too complicated.
Right.
But we get this thing where we get the introduction of the Fez here too.
The Fez. I love Fezes. I wear Fezes. Fezes are cool.
Fezes are cool. And then River comes and she's like, "What in God's name have you got on your head?" And she shoots it. Oh, she does not like him in a hat at all.
She
which
does
we will
not.
see. No. This one,
I liked the light of the Pandorica touching the Dalek, bringing it back to life. I thought that was a really cool idea.
Oh, yeah.
There's this thing that creates stasis, that it creates a frozen paradox for all things. And anything that existed was in there or is in there at some point in time.
Yeah, well, I also like that it's the perfect prison. You can't even escape by dying. It keeps you alive.
Right.
That was kind of cool, an interesting thing there. I like this part with the Dalek when River Song has it at gunpoint or whatever. And the Dalek says, "Records show that the Doctor's companions will show mercy or will show compassion." She's like, "Check your records again."
And he goes, "Mercy, mercy." Yeah. You have every known book in this library. Look me up.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments.
Yeah. And then she goes, and then she comes back and they're like, "What happened to the Dalek?" And she's like, "It died."
Yes.
Oh, so the Doctor has this plan, and he flies the Pandorica into the TARDIS, the exploding TARDIS, and
with a beautiful speech to Amy before he goes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We find out that's why he had her all along with him, because where were her parents?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it turns out
the house was too big.
Yeah, all this time, like the crack had sort of absorbed all these things out of her life, like her parents were gone, and she just didn't, and there was her aunt was there or whatever, but
right.
So he flies in and he's going to create the Big Bang 2. And I want to talk about this with you at the end, but let's get through the episode real quick.
Yeah.
He creates the Big Bang 2, he resets the universe, but unfortunately he has to be on the other side of the cracks, whatever, when they close, because he's like at the heart of it or something. There's some complicated thing, no reason why. So he does this cool thing where he goes back through sort of his life, and we see this really cool scene where he gets to the point in his life where he was on the Byzantium with Amy, and that's where we see this scene again. Where we thought something's not quite right here. It was actually him,
right? This
time, coming to him and saying those things,
right? So,
which I thought was really cool.
It was designed to, and when you watch it through one way, you're thinking, oh man, okay, so something's going on here, and then you watch it through again, and you're like, oh, no, that makes even more sense.
Mm-hmm.
It was really nice. It was nice. He's so good at that.
Yeah, and then I think and then he gets to where Amelia's asleep, and
he brings her inside.
Yeah, he brings her inside, and he tells her this story about the TARDIS. And then one part I was like, oh, man, where he was like, I think I'm going to skip the rest of it. Going back through his life. I know it was probably like, it was the end. It probably would have ruined a little bit, but I was like, oh, we could have seen some like other stuff, like real quick, like, just even like a flashy montage or something.
Right.
But oh well.
Well, I kind of like that he did that. I know you really wanted to see more, but I kind of felt like, it's kind of cool that he's like, okay, I get it. Everything that's happening, now it matters, but I don't need to see the rest. I've dealt with it. Because that's really a sign that he's moved on.
Yeah, well, he says, I hate repeats anyway.
Well, yeah, there's that too. He does hate repeats.
And so, at the end, Amy remembers him. Which I had a question here.
The wedding.
Yeah, the wedding. So I guess River Song remembered him because she had her journal or whatever, even though it was blank. She remembered him, but it wasn't important that she remembered him. Amy had to remember him, right? For him to come back.
But you got to remember too, it's for her. It wasn't about she could remember him more than likely because she's a complicated event in time and space. She's something different. So she can remember him because she exists in different places and time in his life.
Right. Yeah, well, you get that line in the one with the angels where he says, you're a time traveler now, Amy. You remember things differently. Or your mind is different now. So, So, yeah, River's kind of got that going on because she drops the book off, and that helps Amy remember a little bit. Amy remembers, the doctor comes back. He dances like a weirdo.
Best dance ever.
Yeah, it is the best dance ever. They all live happily ever after. We get this fun scene with River where he asks her if she's married. Well, that too, but he asks her if she's married, and she says yes. And he's like, wait, were you thinking I was asking you to marry me, or asking if you're married? She's like, yes. And that sort of sets up a lot for what's next season.
For next
season seems to be next season's like all about River Song, pretty much.
It's that's the season where we find out who she really is.
Who she is, what's her background story.
Turns out she's actually the Queen of England.
That's just
crazy.
That's the hallucinogenic lipstick talking.
Oh, that's my bad. Yeah, that's right. She kisses everybody she meets, apparently.
That's just what she told
She's
you.
a whore.
Okay, this is the complicated part. And we're going to talk about it. Because I think this is where we may disagree.
All right. I'm ready.
We're going to talk about the Big Bang, too. What exactly happened is the question. Here's what I want to do. I want you to tell everyone out there what's implied that happened. Just like kind of the basic thing when he did it. And then I want you to give your opinion on what you think this means.
Okay.
And then I'm going to give my opinion on what this thing, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. So here's kind of what I saw, or what I've seen, or I feel is, how things went down with that. So basically, the stuff with the Pandorica undoes reality. Once he gets put in there, reality is screwed. Everything disappears as if it never happened, except for what was touched by the TARDIS, basically. So when he flew the Pandorica into it, creating a new Big Bang, it reversed his timeline. It reversed time completely. And it just kept going backwards and backwards and backwards and backwards until it restarted everything. So you kind of get a universe without the Doctor until Amy remembers him. Which brings him back, which means he did exist, which means the stuff he's done did happen. But we'd already seen over the course of the season that there were certain events that didn't happen because they were eaten away by the cracks in time. Because remember, the stuff that happens at the end here, Big Bang 2 and all that stuff, everything up to the Pandorica closing, all of that happens before the season begins. It has to, because then the cracks can exist.
Right.
So that moment right before he's put in, that everything up until then and that moment where the TARDIS is exploding is happening. And so from the very first episode, as the Doctor goes through this season, from that very first episode, his life his life is being affected by it.
Right. Well, here's what I want to talk about. That's very good. Thank you, Matt. Here's what I want to talk about. It is said, and I think there's an interview somewhere. I've never actually seen it or read it, but I've heard that people kind of quoted it. Stephen Moffat said he wanted to do this because he wanted to sort of tone down all the alien stuff that was happening on Earth, so that he didn't want all the people on Earth to know that much about the aliens, because every season something happened on Earth with Russell T Davies, and it was like by the end of it, people were like, aliens, whatever,
Yeah, planets in the sky, no big deal.
It's Christmas, the one where it's Christmas and nobody's there.
Right.
With the season 4 Christmas special, and he's like, no one's there, and it's like, wait, well, it's Christmas. Where have you been? Last 3 Christmases has been crazy. So,
yeah, it was just too much.
So
to a certain extent too, that is what happened, and it's kind of interesting to see. You're right, because and he did do that in an interview. He did talk about that, and he really. Moffat wanted to put the genie back in the bottle. And if you kind of look at old Doctor Who, so much stuff happened, but it always seemed to happen in a time or a place that we wouldn't know, because it was never current. And then anything that happened in a current time wasn't believed, And then you get Davies bringing it back. And Davies goes, okay, we're going to make this really like it could be happening right now. And for the first couple seasons, you could imagine this stuff could have been happening, and people are just forgetting about it. They're just ignoring it, thinking it's a prank or something.
Yeah.
Even season 3 with the Master ruling the Earth for a year, they rewound
everyone,
time,
Yeah, everyone forgot, yeah.
Yeah. So Davies was clever enough to make it seem, real. But then you get to season 4, he really did. He let the genie out. He made everybody know, so he could make them thank the Doctor. He could make the Doctor seem like it was okay for him to keep doing what he was doing.
Well, you get this line too from Sarah Jane's son Luke. When David Tennant saves him from getting hit by the car right before he regenerates. You get this line from Luke. He's like talking on the phone to somebody, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Smith put out a thing. Said something was up with the Wi-Fi, made everybody see something funny. See these planets in the sky or whatever." So that they try to like sort of explain something that's like, "Oh, that really didn't happen." There's people out there who, still don't think something really happened or whatever.
Well,
okay. Well, here's what
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this is where I disagree here. Because here's my opinion, and I'll explain why this is my opinion. My opinion is that there was a universe, once he restarted the universe, there was a universe without the Doctor. Okay? And then once Amy remembered, all the things that the Doctor had ever done before this sort of just popped up back in time. So all these things actually did happen. And you get some good hints here where as soon as Amy starts talking about, she says, when I was a kid, I had an imaginary friend. She like stands up and starts talking at her wedding. Her mom goes, oh, not this again.
Right.
And I would say, well, yeah, I'm like, well, why would she be saying that if the Doctor had never existed? Like if he never had come the first time, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like all of a sudden now that Amy's remembering the Doctor, now the mom sort of is like, this memory pops back into her head, like, oh yeah, you did do this. You had this imaginary friend of your kid, and now she's saying, oh well, not this again. You know, Amy, we went through these therapists and everything.
Right.
And so I think that everything that happened. Like, it still happened. Even the season 4 finale, even though it, you know, Stephen Moffat said he kind of wanted to erase that. And here's my reason why I believe that is because so far we have yet to see an example of this being true. We have yet to see a scene in the show where they go, oh yeah, well that did happen. The doctor remembers it, but then he's like, oh well, I guess that got erased and nobody remembers that. Like, they haven't had a scene like that since then. And actually, we've had evidence to the contrary. And I'm going to break one of our rules here, and I'm going to talk about something that happened in season 6. We usually don't go forward, but in season 6, there is a moment where two guards are talking, and they're talking about the doctor and how the doctor scared off the Atraxi. You know, so if the doctor sort of reset it and you know, closed all the cracks, well then how did he scare off the Atraxi? You know, that this event actually did have to happen. And also there's this other sort of thing where in the specials in the Waters of Mars, Adelaide Brooks, there's this whole thing about her as a kid, and when the season 4 thing happened, you know, the Dalek looks in the window and sees her, and if this is like way in the future, when the Doctor meets her on Mars and she remembers this, then this actually must have happened. It's sort of an interesting thing to think about, that all these things that sort of happened up to the cracks were sort of starting to be sucked away at from time. These events actually didn't happen. You know, there's no ducks in a duck pond, but then once it's reset, oh, they're all back again. Everything's there and everything's happened. So my belief is that until Stephen Moffat says otherwise in the show, you know, unless something pops up that actually says, okay, well, we're actually going to use this theory that Stephen Moffat wanted to do, then I'm going to believe otherwise, that everything's back to normal. Everybody remembers everything. Everything's back. It's you know, it's like it would be, because that would really stink for all that to be gone. So, you know, my favorite adventures of some of the previous Doctors, for them not to exist. Come on now.
Well, so now the question is, did 19th century London watch a gigantic Cyber King walk across?
They might have. You know?
They're like, it didn't happen. We're not going to talk about it. That'd be weird.
That's the big one. That's the big one right there is that one. Because that's kind of a hard one to miss. You know, they tried to play off the other ones with something, but that one, it's like, it's huge. Everybody saw it. Right. There's no real explanation, and maybe they just didn't. Maybe nobody wrote it down. I don't know. It was never recorded.
I have. Nobody wrote it down.
I don't know. Maybe
there's just so many things that I'm not sure about.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, and until. Like, that's kind of the only thing. And because it was before he did the Big Bang 2, that kind of leads me to believe that it's like, well, once he did the Big Bang 2, then he replaced everything. You know, he reset everything.
Right.
But so I don't know. Yeah, that's it's really confusing, and it's kind of under a lot of discussion, you know, exactly what is there. So until there's something in the show that it's like, something else in the show, then I'll start to think, okay, well, maybe some things are gone.
Yeah.
But so far, there really hasn't been. I have another theory about these cracks.
Okay.
And actually, this is kind of saying that some things aren't the way they or didn't happen. My theory is that because he closed the cracks were not there. through the second reset of the universe, the second time the universe goes through its cycle. Mm-hmm. So some of these events happen differently. Now, I was talking about those guards that were talking about the Atraxi. So Prisoner Zero must have happened somehow, but maybe he didn't slip through the crack. Maybe he escaped and got to Earth somehow, and the Doctor still had to take care of it. So basically, like any Season 5 story that was like strongly affected by the crack, like maybe happened differently or didn't happen at all. The big one would be the Vampires of Venice. The people ran from the silence, they said, and also, their world was eaten up and disappeared. And it's like, well, if that didn't happen, then why would they come to Venice?
Right.
And all that stuff.
Well, and then, see, I take the other road on that. I think everything that happened did happen exactly as it did. I think you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. The cracks and the stuff that happened. Big Bang 2 didn't undo the previous universe. It just rebooted the universe, so there's Universe 2. We're now in the second iteration of the universe, with everything that had happened before it having happened before it. I don't think Big Bang 2 really is a good term for it, because while it explains that a lot of stuff got rebooted, the end of the universe didn't happen. I think it just rebooted that at that moment when the universe was about to implode on itself, it kept going. And it didn't... Every star didn't supernova. I just think it's that last adventure with the Pandorica that it sort of rewound a little bit and said, okay, the universe did not collapse. Things are still going on the way it should be.
Yeah, see, that's a really interesting way to look at it. The way I kind of looked at it for a long time was that he basically, once he did this Big Bang, it kind of rewound, so like it went all the way back to the beginning of the universe again and started over without these cracks, like without this event happening in it. That was kind of my thing. So then it was like, so then, everything started over from the Big Bang and went forward, first Doctor, second Doctor, went through all this stuff, and then it got to this point in Season 5, but there were no cracks.
Right.
But the only people who kind of remember these things are the people who are really affected by them, like Amy and Rory and the Doctor and River.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Well, and I really
it's
think...
kind of
I think we're taking for granted when we say Big Bang 2, reboot the universe. Who's the only person that's actually ever said that? The Doctor. The Doctor lies. He's building up.
Yeah,
he does. He's building up his own image. What he should be saying.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
That's a good line in this episode, this last episode here. That kind of, it happens in the end, or it happens a lot in before with the other Doctors, but you don't really no one's ever actually come out and said it like that.
Yeah.
Like River did. It's like, oh, well, don't you realize the Doctor lies all the time? And you're like, oh my God, he does.
He does. He does it because he doesn't want people to know what he's really up to. He doesn't just want to do things and do it well. He wants it to be clever. And the best way to be clever is to make everybody think you're doing something completely different. And that's kind of where we're at with him, is that, oh, well, all of a sudden, he's not really trying to save the universe from these bad guys. He was secretly trying to save us from those bad guys. And this whole time he was pretending he didn't know what was going on with Amy, but he did know what was going on with Amy. So well, yeah, of course he lied to you. Why wouldn't he lie to the audience too?
Right.
Just makes for a better story.
Yeah, it does.
Indeed.
Well, that's all I had for this
season 5. Let me tell you something. I was excited when Doctor Who came back with Eccleston. I was excited with Tennant. I was excited for Season 3 and The Master. I was overjoyed with Season 4. Like, seriously, Season 4 blew my mind. The emotional ending to Season 4, the emotional ending to David Tennant, was so beautiful. And for me, emotionally, it felt like it came full circle. And then Season 5 hit, and suddenly there was this new way to fall in love with the Doctor, a brand new kind of fairy tale. And now, oh yeah, I think Matt Smith has really taken on the role. He's become the person that the Doctor is meant to be. He's become the way he's meant to be written, in my opinion, in my view of it, and I'm in love with that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to sort of ask you about. Is I know, people who listen to this know that I really love David Tennant and that you love Matt Smith, and we've actually gotten to Matt Smith now. So if you want to go ahead and gush about Matt Smith, just
let me tell you guys about Matt Smith. Let me just say this. When it comes to a character like the Doctor, to a huge extent, everything that's ever been written for a big majority of Doctor Who has been the Doctor is the central character, and every one of us is just kind of playing along and coming along with him. But what you really don't get is that's not the Doctor. The Doctor is this bizarre character. He's this mystery that we're never meant to understand. We're just sort of seeing the effects of his life on the universe. And so we really are the companions that go with him. And to that extent, I like a Doctor Who that you can't understand. You can't necessarily know why he's doing the things he's doing. He comes off as alien. Matt Smith is very alien, and I like that. I like that you're just trying to catch up with him. You're always trying to figure out what he's doing and saying. David Tennant you're related to. Chris Eccleston you relate to. You even relate to most of the older Doctors, except for Colin Baker, who no one relates to, not even Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy, who was meant to thank you, and Sylvester McCoy, who was meant to be sort of a darker, mysterious Doctor. Oh, and Hartnell. You're not supposed to relate to the Doctor in a certain way. And for me, more of Patrick Troughton comes out in Matt Smith every episode. More William Hartnell comes out in every Matt Smith episode. More Sylvester McCoy comes out in every Matt Smith episode. And I love that he is just this mysterious creature that we are just giving the privilege of following through his random adventures. We're not running along with him. We're not falling in love with him. We're just there to see it. And that's for me.
You got to give a lot of, and you got to give a lot of credit to the writing from Stephen Moffat and all the other people who started writing after Tennant left.
Moffat's the
show is
writer.
He certainly is, and the show is just 10 times better. I mean, it was awesome before, but you couldn't think it would get more awesome, and it is. And the way Matt Smith plays the Doctor and plays this awesome writing is just fantastic.
It is, and I mean that's to be able to. I mean, how do you follow Tennant? How do you follow Russell T Davies' writing? He puts the show together that it's so emotional and so filled with these overarching themes, and everything is just constantly just thrown at you, and you feel it, and then you get to the end, and it's such an epic moment in this character's life, and you're sort of sitting there thinking, man, this is it. This is the pinnacle moment. If it had ended right there with Doctor Who regenerating, and that was, credits done, that would have been the best ending to Doctor Who. You would have felt that ending to Doctor Who and said, okay, now let's move on to something slightly less as interesting. And that was Doctor Who. But then Matt Smith comes along, and Stephen Moffat starts writing for him, and you start kind of watching this going, there's all these other ways to write this character. And then season after season, we've been getting, there's all this story that we're still not getting to yet, because there's still story to get to. And it's a different way of writing, it's a different way of approaching it, and it blew my mind. And Matt Smith continues to improve upon his performance every season.
Definitely. You know what? I feel bad for the person who has to follow him.
It'll be David Tennant again. We'll just bring him back.
He'll have a different hairdo.
We'll bleach it blonde. You'll be good, Dave.
Yeah, he'll be good. Or maybe red. He'll finally get to be ginger.
Aww. Poor ginger Doctor.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this Super Season 5 special.
Super Season 5 special. Thanks for joining us on this what took a long time to record.
Yes.
And hopefully did not take that long to get through, and your enjoyment was equally as awesome and matching.
yeah, so we hope to see you guys later. The rest of Season 7 is fast approaching, so we're very excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And expect much more regular sound coming from the Vortex.
All right, bye, everybody.
Better. See you later.
Goodbye.
Insert music here.